Hi everyone, it's lovely to see everybody here tonight. I'm really chuffed to be joined by four very old friends. I mean, they're not old, but they're my friends for a long time. And we have Tom Norris, Gillianne Haddow, Malcolm Johnson and Rebecca Gilliver, who are make up nearly half of the front desks of the London Symphony Orchestra string section. We all joined the LSO roughly the same time in the last millennium, we worked out the other day, and we were all pretty much fresh out of college, weren't we? Were we? I was anyway. What about you, Tom? Were you fresh out of college?
Kind of via Winnipeg, because I went off and sort of escaped for a couple of years, and then, but yeah.
So you did a bit of groundwork there and a little bit of sort of testing the water with orchestra.
Yeah. You could get. I froze my toes off. It was a very cold place to live.
Yikes. Oh well, welcome back. And Gillianne, what about you? Before you came on the string scheme, didn't you, through the academy?
I did the string scheme at the academy, and then I didn't initially come to the LSO because I was doing small string chamber ensembles, and then I got my job at 27. And one of the first things I found out was that once I joined, the section immediately had a sweepstake to try and guess what age I was, because I obviously still looked like a teenager. Yeah.
Well done. Oh, very good.
23.
And what about you, Malky? When did you join?
Well, I was a bit older when I joined. I think I was 30, over 30.
Ooh, old.
But, yeah, exactly. So I've been, after my studies in London, I'd gone over to the States to basically to be a teaching assistant from a very good viola teacher there. And then I joined a quartet. And I only meant to stay over in the States for, I'd say, a year. And in the end, it ended up being 5.5. So you never know what's going to happen. So I came back from the States after the quartet. And got a job pretty well immediately with the LSO in 1996.
Not too shabby, Malky. Very good. And Rebecca, what about you? How old were you?
I was about 30 as well, I think. And I'd studied in Manchester for a long time and then in Switzerland, and then moved to London for the first time after all that and found it a bit tricky. So I ended up working a lot abroad. I was working in small chamber groups in Amsterdam and in Sweden, and with Gillianne in the Scottish ensemble for a while. And then I got my job, when I was about 30, I think.
Fantastic. So we're going to be chatting to the guys this evening, about their time in the LSO. Please do send in any questions you have for them in the question and answer box that you'll see at the bottom of your Zoom window. Can't promise I'll answer all of them, but we'll have a go. So please do stick them in there if you'd like to ask them a question. But the first thing I'd like to talk about, I mean, it's a question everyone asks about the LSO. Well, when I tell them I was in it, they'll say, "Oh, were you on Star Wars?" And it was pretty damn exciting, wasn't it? I mean, well, it was for me anyway. I'm a massive Star Wars fan and a big John Williams fan. But perhaps you could tell the guys how you find his sessions, because I found them quite different from any other composer that I've ever worked with. Would you agree with that, Tom?
Yeah, well, of course, you know, I hadn't done much, as I don't think any of us had done much before John Williams. So it's quite an amazing thing when you turn up to work for the LSO, and one of the first bits of big work, commercial film music you do is with John Williams, who's probably, you know, he's the god as far as the history of film music is concerned. So it's an amazing thing to feel that you're in that space. But I did find it, apart from how I found it was so exciting to have the film at the back. They used to project the film onto this massive screen at the back of the studio, and you'd sort of play, and you'd have to not turn around and look at it because it was just so tempting to do that. But that was, of course, so that John Williams could see, and he used to conduct without a click. A lot of the cues that we did with him, nowadays everyone uses a click, and the click changes every few bars, even by a micro sort of second, and the conductor's basically there to follow the click. And with John Williams, you really got the impression that he was conducting, he was cutting the music live to the film as he was going on and timing it the way that it should be. And that was quite awesome to see that, I remember.
Yeah, I mean, so you guys, you're right there under his nose and the conductor's noses. Rebecca, do you like being that close to conductors, or sometimes do you wish you were a bit further, safer distance away sometimes?
It's a good question. There are advantages and disadvantages to being at the front. I mean, the advantage is that it's incredibly easy to follow. You can hear everything that the conductor says in rehearsals, which is brilliant, of course, and you feel very involved. The further back you go, the more difficult it gets. So practice hard and get yourselves a job at the front.
Good advice there. Thank you, Rebecca. We got a question come in from Caroline. Hello, Caroline. Caroline says, what's the longest tour you've ever been on with the LSO? Malky, could you take that one?
Oh, gosh. There's been so many long tours. I mean, I consider long being 3 weeks and over. So we went to Australia, we went to South America, and but I know that the orchestra before our time used to do even longer tours than that. They went the world tour, which I think was months long, wasn't it?
It was about 3 months, wasn't it?
Yeah, so I don't know how we survived that, but it was a very different beast, the LSO in those days. Not many women, and it was male dominated. So very different nowadays.
Yeah.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, but you are on tour a lot of the time, and obviously not right now. Thank you for joining us. But you know, the job does require living out of a suitcase a lot of the time, and I mean, I know, Gillianne, you're more organised than I am, but I pretty much never unpacked. But there is a lot of touring, isn't there? A lot of sort of going backwards and forwards and here and there and everywhere. Do you find that exciting, grueling, bit of both? Gillianne, sorry.
Oh, you're asking me?
Sorry, that was you, Gillianne. Sorry.
I think that's where it's really important that you get on with your colleagues. Your colleagues become your lifelong friends. Like, we're actually all incredibly close friends because we work together all the time, and outside of playing we have to socialize with each other all the time. So, you know, it's very, very important that you learn to get on with people. But being on tour it is amazing. I think maybe the impression is more glamorous than the reality. A lot of it is getting up very early, getting on a plane, going somewhere else, arriving there, grabbing some lunch, going to the concert hall, doing the concert, grabbing food, maybe some wine, and going to bed and getting up very early the next day, getting on a plane and doing it all again. So the idea that we've seen the world is maybe a little exaggerated. We've seen a lot of airports and a lot of concert halls and a lot of hotel rooms. But, you know, it'd be really nice once I stop working to actually go back and see these countries for their culture outside of the job that we're busy doing.
Don't forget, guys, you can ask questions to Tom and Malcolm, Gillianne and Rebecca. Do stick it in the question and answer bit at the bottom of the Zoom window here now. That'd be great. So tell me, all 4 of you have successfully re-auditioned within the orchestra. So you started off further back than you are now. You re-auditioned, played to all your colleagues that you knew very well, and got promoted and did it. I have to say, hats off to you, amazing. But how did that feel? Rebecca, right, you always seem to be slightly less stressed by everything than by auditioning than everyone else I know. Is this as an act, is it?
I certainly wouldn't say that now. If you asked me to do an audition now, sort of 10 years later, I'd be dying, I think. I suppose I did a lot of solo and recital work when I left college, and I think that helped. So I wasn't so fazed by the auditions, but when I did my principal audition, I was the co-principal. And after 7 years, I did an audition for principal. I did take 2 weeks off work completely, cleared the diary, just sat home and practiced for hours and hours and hours every day because that was the only way I was going to get through it. So yeah, but it wasn't a nice feeling. But I did feel that everyone was rooting for me, which was good. There's a lot of people at my audition, and it was supportive. It was scary but supportive, which was really nice.
But a question come in from Andrea Jones. Hello, Andrea. I think a few of you know Andrea. What, if that's the Andrea Jones that I think it is anyway, and she says, what do you think are the most important qualities for a principal to have? You're the principal. Well, I mean, how do you view the job then? How do you Do you consider them your sheep that you are looking after, or do you consider it a sort of battle? How does it feel in your section?
Are you asking me?
Yes, sorry, Rebecca. I really should be more clear. Yes.
That's a really difficult question, actually. I mean, I have huge respect for my section, and you don't want to get in the way of anything they're doing musically. There are times when you have to sort of guide what's going on, and you know, if things are falling apart or something, you have to put your oar in. But I would ideally just like to trust them to get on and do their job, which they do so well. So
Yeah.
when I manage that, I don't know. You'd have to ask them.
I think if I might chip in there, there's a lot of anxiety that tends to happen in sections, violin, viola, cello sections, and like because it's a big group of people and everybody who's there wants to feel valued. You know, each member of the section is incredibly valuable, and I think, as Rebecca said, it becomes more challenging the further away from the front you are, and I think one of the main jobs that principals seem to be appreciated the most for is kind of listening to that dynamic in the section, and when there does appear to be, you know, confusion or stress or anxiety about what's happening, and don't forget that people can get stressed and anxious about an up bow or a down bow in the wrong place, or someone playing, you know, an inch too far one way or the other, or using the wrong articulation. These things do stress people out, and I think principals who are aware of those things and try to allay those stresses and anxieties in the section do well. I don't know if you guys would agree with that, but it's definitely, from having been in a section and knowing what it's like, I think there's definitely something there that they can help with at the front, you know.
We've had a question from Joshua. Hi, Joshua. He says, and perhaps you've partially answered this, maybe, I don't know. He says, what do you think the biggest challenge in playing on the front desk is, and how do you work around it? Gillianne, what would you say that was for you?
That's
Tricky question.
That's such a difficult question.
Or if anyone feels inspired to answer that one.
I think sometimes if you sit on the front desk, you know that everybody behind you is, albeit they're incredibly talented themselves, but there's something subconscious that is relying on you, and they're watching you and they're following you, and if you go wrong, you know, just because of the dynamic of a section playing together, they might go wrong and they'd be annoyed with themselves, they'd be annoyed with the front desk that we had gone wrong. So I think the pressure to be always correct is quite strong. Do you feel that?
Yeah, definitely. But having said that, they're also strong behind. One thing about the LSO, that, as Tom was saying, the sections are so strong, and you don't really have to do that much at the front. You just have to not get in the way. I think Rebecca said that too. Just less is more, I think.
Just don't screw it up.
Well, yeah, try not to.
One of the difficult things as principal, and the others have all played principal, so they know this as well, is that when you're playing with the section, it's one sort of mindset, and when you suddenly have to play a solo, you have to click into a different mindset straight away and play your solo, and then click back. And funny enough, it's that I sometimes find more difficult. I play my solo and then I suddenly remember, right, you know, shut up now and behave after you've had your bit.
We've gotten a question from somebody who's not left their name here, but is saying, is there a maximum age to be considered for a position in the LSO? Is there an age limit? Now, there used to be a thing where everybody was retired at 60, wasn't there? And Maurice Murphy managed to, everybody, without Maurice asking, everybody sort of voted together that they wanted him to stay, and in the end he begged to retire, poor bloke.
74, wasn't it? I mean, wasn't how long did he stay on?
Like an extra 7 years or something ridiculous like that. Amazing guy.
He was a legend.
He really was a legend. Yes, so obviously, you know, that's not the case for everybody. And then, of course, the retirement age for salaried jobs has changed. At the end, there's two questions here, I think, really. So, you know, it's entering the orchestra, but also leaving. So dealing with the leaving first, what's the deal these days, guys? Is there automatic retirement still?
Yeah.
Yeah. When I retire, it'll be 67.
Oh, 67.
Age, yeah.
67, right. But then coming in, how is it viewed? Generally, are people younger or older, or is it a mixture?
Well, what's very interesting about that is, you know, we have the audition process where you're asked to play 2 concertos and then all the excerpts, orchestral excerpts. Now you'll find a lot of students leaving college playing their concertos fabulously because they're really in shape for that kind of music. And then they will absolutely fall down every time on the orchestral excerpts because they don't have the experience of being in an orchestra, or they perhaps don't have the experience of auditioning to realize that that is really what we're listening to more than their concertos. So you'll often find younger players will always play better at the auditions, and older players, sometimes it's hard to get through that first screened audition because your actual playing may not be so fabulously, technically fabulous. But we have to remember that once you get an older player into the orchestra, all that experience really comes out and they'll fit in very, very quickly. So, you know, we notice it with extra players, you know, more experienced extras will just slot in and play, but a younger player who's more, you know, technically agile will possibly fare better in an audition.
Yeah. Yeah. So are all the auditions screened for the first round now?
At the moment, yeah.
At the moment, do you think it might change?
I think it's a debate that the orchestra is going to have at some point. We've changed it about, was it 2 years ago or something?
Yeah, as a trial, on a trial basis, wasn't it?
And how have you felt it sitting on panels? How have you enjoyed or not enjoyed having that experience of having to, I heard, I don't know, on the grapevine, that it was 6 days of auditions when you advertised those violin jobs a few years ago. And so many people wanted to try, and you must have sat through endless screened violin auditions. It's been very difficult.
Yeah, I personally found it very hard, and almost to the point that I've had to rethink the way I listen when the screen is there. And I felt sorry for the people who auditioned right at the beginning, because for me it was very difficult for me to even to understand what was going on. So yeah, I'm getting better at it, but I found it very difficult.
Malk, do you sort of, just wondering, do you feel that we have to develop a different kind of empathy? Because let's face it, if you're faced with somebody in the flesh, there's a certain amount of not judgment, but when you're listening to them, you want to give them your best appraisal and you want to be positive, but there's something to do with being face to face with them that gives you you empathize with them, you can't help doing that. When there's a screen, whatever level of empathy is there is kind of cut off. And I think that I think personally, you have to be careful not to be too harsh when there is a screen there.
Yeah, I think that's very true, Tom. And I found myself being far too harsh at the beginning. And I think, of course, now it's been 2 years maybe down the road, and I think we're getting better at it. So it has been a process that we've had to go through as an orchestra, and that's fine. But we've all had to sort of develop the way we see these things. So I think we're getting there.
We've got a question come in from Amy. Hi, Amy. Amy asks, have you got any words of advice for a student finding the idea of auditions quite daunting? Now, you're not alone, Amy. It's not just the students that find it daunting. Definitely everybody, I think. What would you say to somebody, if you're sitting in the hall, the big Barbican hall, and they're about to come on, what would your words in their ears be?
I've got a couple of things that I would say is, first of all, everyone really wants you to play well, or not.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Thing to remember. Do lots of auditions, go in there, and even if there's a screen, treat it like a concert.
And I think even before that, play to all your friends and all your enemies, as many people as you can. Make it as nerve-wracking as you could possibly do, because that will set you up so well. If you don't play to anybody, I have made that mistake in the past myself, so I know from experience. Play to as many people as you can before you even get to the audition.
Yeah, I heard a good one once. Said just before you play to all your friends, if you're lucky enough to have stairs, run up and down your stairs a good 10 times, because it really gets your heart pumping at the speed it will be pumping when you walk into that audition room. Because don't expect a fabulous day. You've got to make sure that your bad day is great, and recreating those nerves in advance really helps you to cope with them. So run up down stairs
I've never needed the stairs to recreate things, I must say.
Even playing to friends.
Yeah, no, especially playing to friends. I think the stairs would have killed me, actually.
True though, isn't it? I mean, playing to friends, I think for me it's the worst one for sure. Every time I could play to 2,000 people I didn't know in a concert and feel way less nervous than playing to you four, for instance. Wouldn't get my violin out for a million questions. It's a really tricky thing, Amy. Just hang in there and keep going. Excellent.
One last quick word to Amy is just think it's a presentation. It's not just about the violin or the instrument. It's not just about the music. You walk on stage and you're presenting yourself. And if you were doing a job interview, you would probably do a certain amount of preparation in that way. And we're not taught to do that. And music college doesn't really talk about it. But presentation isn't, it's a mindset, and it's how you approach the event and how you come across. And I think that if you can get those things sort of lined up in your psyche, I think it helps.
I think I have to find my dogs because they haven't been fed. Just give me 1 second.
1 second. While Rebecca does that, live on the internet. We got a question here that leads quite nicely on from that, actually. Somebody's asking, is there an interview as part of the application process? And has this ever been the deal breaker for you as the panel? Well, the actual audition process, of course, there's then the trial, and of course the trial is then that's the interview, really, isn't it? You don't ever do actual interviews, do you? As part of the audition?
But can I say, in the response to something Tom said there, presentation is also your personality comes across when you walk into the room. And sometimes the panel will hopefully say hello and be nice. And if you can smile and speak back to them and be very responsive, if you're asked to play an excerpt again, as sometimes happens, just be very polite. And because we did have somebody come for an audition once, and they were so grumpy, it really affected the way we felt about the playing, because the personality is there. And don't forget, you're applying to work very closely with hopefully your best friends in life, and your personality is hugely important in getting a job. And it comes across when you play, and it comes across in the auditions. It's really important.
Thank you, Gillianne. We've got a question here from, it says Flannery, I think it might be James, I'm not sure. Hello. He says, or she says, what is the trial period like in the LSO, and how long can they last up to? We've seen some quite long ones, haven't we? The longest I'm aware of was 4 years. Does anyone know a longer one than that?
Oh, not longer than that, no.
Yeah. But also, I mean, they're not always long, are they?
No, sometimes they're very short. It seems quite arbitrary, but when people come in and they fit, and don't forget that there are lots of boxes that have to be ticked in order for someone to come in and just fit in every aspect, including their personality and their playing and their sociability and all the rest of it. People can get appointed quite quickly, but even in those cases, a lot depends on how much these people are available and for what kind of stint they're available, because our work is so sporadic that someone might get a trial and then they might not come in for 3 months because they're busy in their current engagements. Then they might come in, but they might only be able to do one project and then nothing else for a month or two. And trials can get quite protracted because of that, which is a factor, especially when they become quite long and drawn out like that, I think.
Yeah. What's the deal with voting at the LSO? So the LSO is a self-governing orchestra. The person isn't appointed by one person. There's usually a panel, isn't there? How does that work these days?
It's the whole section has to vote, and there's a certain percentage that people have to get a yes percentage in order to get the job. And if it's principal, all the principals get asked as well after the section has voted.
Yeah. And will they have had to have done a stint with the principal conductor before they get voted on, or is that not always possible?
It's desirable, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean,
in some orchestras it's a must, but I never can't remember whether it was at LSO or not.
I think it is. I don't think it's written down, but I'm pretty sure.
yeah, I think it would be strange to appoint someone who hadn't played with the principal.
Yeah, I think so.
Definitely, it's a front desk job. If it's a numbered job at the front, you would have to play for the principal conductor. But unlike other orchestras, the conductor maybe has a say in who gets appointed, but with us, Simon doesn't have a say.
Have you ever had a situation, naming no names of course, where the principal conductor has not been happy about an appointment? Tactful silence.
I don't think so.
No, actually, I don't think so.
No.
I hope he likes me.
Shh.
All these years.
Don't tell him. We've got a question from Ilham. Hi, Ilham. Tom mentioned, she says, that the boxes that have to be ticked when someone's on trial. What are those boxes, except for the personality qualities and playing abilities? Well, yeah, so how could you sort of break it down, and what sort of things do you look for, maybe personally?
I think a lot of them have been covered in this webinar. I think I definitely don't have a set of criteria and boxes. I think I use that term because there's a lot of factors that have to kind of fall into place in order for someone to be appointed, and you know, a lot of things have to kind of work out in the right way, and all the things that we've talked about are part of that. But you know, there is a certain element of you know, there are times when people have an opportunity to do something which is seen in a nice light by somebody else. That's just a social thing, and that might or might not happen for two different trialists, and it might advantage one and it might disadvantage the other. That's what I meant really. There's a lot of luck, and when people talk about luck in music, I don't think they're talking about pure luck, like put your hand in a bowl and pull out the winning ticket. I think they're talking about, there are a lot of musicians with lots of talents, lots of different personality traits. And there are lots of different people that they have to please. And you can't really set a formula. You can't really say, well, this is what you do and these are the boxes you have to tick. But I think, you know, a number of people who go through the same experience or who go through the same process could have very different experiences. I don't know if I'm answering the question very well, but I was trying to get out of the box ticking.
Gillianne, what were you going to say?
Each orchestra in itself has a different personality. So just because you don't get a job in one doesn't mean you aren't perfectly suited to another.
Yeah, and on that line, be yourself on trial, because you've got to be happy as well as the orchestra's got to give you a job, but you've got to fit in. So if you act a certain way on your trial, you're not going to be able to keep that up forever. So just be yourself and you'll find the right job for yourself in the end. Hopefully.
Thank you so much, everybody, for joining me. It's been just lovely to see you all again. So nice. Really appreciate your time, and love to see so many people joining us and asking questions. I'm sorry there were a few questions we didn't have time to answer, but I hope that was a helpful session. And we've got another one next week on women conductors. Is the woman's place on a podium? Quite a catchy title. Quite pleased with that. Anyway, do join us for that if you can. And thank you very much, and good night, everybody. Bye.